Good evening, everyone, or good afternoon, rather. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. For tonight's Confocal User Group meeting, I would like to say thank you for everybody coming, and I'm looking forward to a really fantastic conversation that will be happening. Especially would like to say thank you to SABI for also collaborating with ZEISS in order to organize this particular event. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our first speaker, Ben Loos, who's going to speak to us about funding landscape for microscopy in South Africa. Thanks, Ben.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Anja. So yeah, welcome everyone online. I see Adrienne, wonderful, Anja, Orly, fantastic to have you all with us. It is really exciting how our user group and the community is expanding, and that we actually have these key topics to discuss. I think that's in itself a really important milestone, that we are actually talking about these really important aspects. And so when Anja asked me to speak about the funding landscape, I thought, sure. And so it's a little bit, I would just like to get a few main thoughts shared, and I'm hoping that it can become a discussion where we get also insights on your perspectives, the main strengths, but also the challenges. And so I wanted to focus a little bit on, for one, of course, the aspect around sustainability is, of course, a very big topic in SABI generally, right? And so it goes hand in hand with funding. Funding for research, funding for equipment, funding for infrastructure, and funding for staff, right? We've heard just now, Chris, the example of how many hours you would want to run this instrument so that you can have the service contract. Of course, one has to then, in addition, consider how the particular environment manages the equipment and the staffing and so forth. So I think the topic is fantastic and really absolutely critical. And in SABI, those that could attend the EOE, the Exchange of Experience meetings, is of course an important gathering. We had shared there that really in SABI we are very excited that we are working closer and closer between the facilities, the PIs, and the industry partners, so that we are enhancing the various challenges in the country. And so that's kind of the SABI ecosystem here. So, so the question was also, what is the current situation around funding? And I thought, and I had just seen a lot of kind of applications from our African partners, that I would like to actually speak a little bit around what we actually do have. And then from there to go to what is actually required in terms of awareness and so forth. So the main aspects are, what are the funding models for instruments? What are the funding streams for experiments, i.e. research funding avenues? And not just funding models, but also funding streams for equipment. And I would like to start with a little bit what the strengths are, what we actually do have in South Africa with regards to these three, because it's quite easy to say we don't. But having just assessed many of our neighboring African countries, we actually have a lot. But obviously there are major challenges, and we are not really presenting and leveraging in all areas so much as we have. So So I wanted to share a little bit with you and would really like to hear also your views on what if you look back and also if you look forward, what is working well and what are the strengths. So if we look at funding models, then I think, of course, important is that we do have an equipment-based and a PI-based network. So we have already some kind of, through SABI, a network knowing what equipment we have where and what facility staff we have, hence what expertise is there, and so forth. So that information is there. We also have a budget system for the equipment. It is, of course, challenging and it's rocky and there are all kinds of issues around it, but we do have a national equipment program. And now I just want to kind of stick with what we do have for now. We also have PIs. We have a lot of good PIs. That's rather important. If we look just in our environment in Africa, to actually have PIs that have projects, that have good protocols for good questions, we have that. We have that ecosystem of PIs that would be willing to step into the bioimaging field. That's fantastic. We have a lot of good students. We have talented students. We have eager students that take their work very serious. I think it's a massive plus. I've heard from colleagues overseas, don't want to mention any countries, that I have PhD students, but I can't motivate them. They have everything. They have the grant, they have the, they are looked after, but I can't, they're out of the lab early and I can't really, there's limited drive. I don't think we have a problem with that. We have good, motivated, talented students. We have a peer review system. With regards to equipment, there is a peer review system. B, with regards to the local grants, as small as they are. And with regards to the local research, of course, we do adhere to a rather good peer review system. So I think these are all very, very promising and good points of departure. And we have a growing society for bioimaging. I really must say, I think in the last, it is probably due to a mix of GBI works really penetrating into the different regions, coupled with the increased need and demand, because we've had so many people retiring that there's a lot of major obvious gaps that emerged. So, but I think in the last 2 years, we have there's a change in the society of bioimaging. So I think all of that is rather promising. I don't know, shall we maybe pause here briefly and say what else is there? Or should we go straight to, well, but what do we do with it? What is your sentiment? Pause for a moment. Okay, so can we open the floor then briefly and say, what from your perspective, how do you see it? Is there anything else that we are actually not appreciating or not seeing as an attractive avenue to leverage properly?
We are going to talk about it a little bit later, but I think the whole sentiment that shared equipment is important is in South Africa established, and there's a lot overseas, some in South Africa as well, but in general, the open access type of model is accepted. The institutions like that model, where in other countries it's my lab, my microscope, no one else use it. I'm not 100% sure. I don't work with stats, but I think that's a positive that we have shared equipment, not just in one institution. We have it actually across the country.
And I think if I think of what is happening locally, Aurelie, you just had your research day and generally the engagements with the various institutes. I think there is quite a nice crosstalk and openness to really buy into that quite easily, right? This equipment is broken, you go to that side, and I think that's rather organic, and I think has grown like that. And so hence it's quite easy for us to also buy into that this is helpful.
Yes, it's very true. We're open to other institutions. So when their instrument breaks, they can come here at the facility and we are happy to have them. So there is a growing community from different universities around here.
Yes, thanks so much. Was it Aurelie? Yes. So in the sense of growing also technical support and that the network expands into that avenue as well.
Yeah, we would like to expand equipment and apply together for new equipment if possible. And I think we have to put efforts together for that.
Excellent. I see there was another hand up. Can't see Divesh. Divesha?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Divesha, we can hear you.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say, in addition to what Aurelie said, it's the diversity that we have in the research in South Africa, and well, obviously our population is quite diverse, and then we have that diversity extends into the research, and then we see a growing number of different research areas that are discovering that they can use microscopy, and then they can be pulled into this kind of application towards microscopy. And I think that's one of our strengths that we found at the research day as well. There were lots of different research areas that came together to show that how they could actually use microscopy in their research. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Devesha. Yeah, that's a strong point, and that of course is also speaks to the focus areas of a national priority, but also those of the globally ranked challenges that there is a lot that we are actually covering, and also of course a lot of know-how and data, unique data. So in other words, if there is research actually in that particular field, it's rather unique data. And just thinking about, we are just starting with the Parkinson's disease study. It's a unique mutation because it's a local. So we have really that additional angle. Thanks, Divesha. That's very good. Adrienne, wonderful. Nice to have you. Yes, Adrienne.
Hi, sorry. I'm just trying to sort out my sound. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks so much for including us. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. But I just wanted to say maybe to add, in addition to the equipment, I think one of the strengths of South Africa is that we have quite a good supply system for the reagents, etc., that you need. Lots available elsewhere in African countries, and I think there's also the potential for some of the things that are happening at the moment for this to negatively impact on microscopy if we're not careful about protecting it. So I'm thinking maybe primarily around certain antibodies and those types of reagents, some of which are getting harder and harder to get into the country. So I think that's both something that's a pro, but potentially could become a risk if we don't, if we don't maintain that.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you, Adrienne. That's actually a very important point. And I think our risk is sometimes that we compare ourselves with the global north, where an antibody arrives in 2 days. But if we actually compare ourselves with our neighbors here, you're absolutely right. We have the network, we can get liquid nitrogen, we can get all kinds of things. We just need to plan it more timely in advance, but we do actually get it. And but it's an important flag there, Adrienne, that you indicated with regards to the import and the challenges there that are a bit on the horizon, and where, again, a community like this could be quite a good vessel for communicating requirements and needs and urgencies. So thanks very much, Adrienne. Good. Then, since we only have 20 minutes for this slot, I want to move on to some other points. Lisa, any other?
I think it's important to note this one as well, because it's a industry supported event, this one. The fact that we have a very strong industry support in South Africa. We've just had a talk at ABIC where they have to fly in the engineer from South Africa for their maintenance every year. It's incredibly expensive for them to run that microscope. We are privileged to have a number of engineers, although there are challenges, etc., around it. We do have really supportive industry in South Africa. Yeah. For equipment, I'm talking equipment now, back to that.
That's a good point. We are kind of the starting point for the African continent, and so many kind of environments are really here, so that from here further growth can be enabled. It's a very important point. And hence, if I go back to our SABI triangle here with the industry engagement, I think we mean that. And another advantage is we are small, so we know each other really quite well. We know the institutions, we know the PIs, we know our industry partners, and that's, I think, an advantage. Excellent. Then I would like to move on to just a few more points to now, what are the challenges? And then I would like to end with how I see the three major aspects. But of course, I would just like to put them out here to ignite this discussion. So of course, research funding, right, is obviously a challenge, and we do know that the national research funds are absolutely limited. Right, a normal standard national grant of the Medical Research Foundation, the NRF, it's like 200,000 rands per annum, which needs to be distributed to 3 or 4 postgraduate students, their entire projects. And of course, hence, that does not speak to the imaging costs. So hence, back to a sustainable funding model, it does not speak at all to the requirements to enable sustainable management if we would build this in-house, build on national funds only. So hence there is of course a big gap that imaging as a cost and equipment utilization as a cost is actually not really seen, and the grants are just too small. 200,000 rands could be your annual budget purely for imaging if you have a team of 10 students. So that's, of course, a really major challenge, right? So then in terms of funding models, of course, there are major challenges that the NEP hasn't grown with the increase in costs. B, it's only every second year. C, we have the major issues of prioritization of different universities and the various aspects around that, many of which are, of course, very important. But these are challenges, especially in the face of aging equipment, and hence then having not that awareness with the funders that equipment is really impacting the important aspect. So some universities have strategic investments, some don't. Some are able to co-fund through international grants, some don't. The international grants usually are quite PI and high risk question focused, so it doesn't really foster a community build in that sense. So these, I think, are important aspects, right? And then, of course, the whole aspect around imaging scientists, equipment maintenance, how many universities recognize an imaging scientist that is employed and hence is not part of that business model as you had indicated. So these are all, this is what we don't have, right? We have really, what we have is a massive polarity from kind of 0 to hero, really from nothing to a full cost. And obviously that is just not helping us as a community at all, right? But the biggest thing for me is we don't have the appropriate visibility in the sense of that imaging, what bioimaging is actually contributing. So, and therefore we don't really have buy-in, we don't really have lobby, we don't have that recognition with the funders, we are not on any roadmap and so forth. And hence, these are for me the biggest aspects that, and hence that our collective voice, our kind of unity through the community, through South Africa Bioimaging, would really help with that visibility, would help with meaningful engagement, and I mean high-level engagement with the ministry, with the rectorates, where certain decisions are being made. And of course, so these would be aspects for me that deserve major attention. So I would like to open these parts to the discussion from your perspective. What don't we have and what should be critically be done more of? Because then we as a community drive that together. Okay, so I leave it at that.
Thanks, Ben. Some really excellent points. I think your sorry, as you handed me the microphone, I've gone blank. I think you raised a really good point that I was thinking of a bit earlier in terms of the recognition of human capital, of staffing, and I think that is a big one that becomes a barrier for maintenance of platforms beyond just the equipment. And that it's worth flagging that people time costs money as well. But the recognition, I think, is the hardest part, because getting that attention, and I think a lot of people talk about it in regards to marketing, and to some extent I think that that's correct, working out how to market imaging and what we do. But I think it's also on us to, and I don't have a solution or a strong recommendation how to do it, but it's also more than just marketing, educating. And I'm going to speak about education at the end of this, but this aspect is missing from what I'm talking about in terms of educating our peers on the value of imaging, not just how to do it. And it is a tough one, but I think it's something that as a community is worth tackling.
Thanks so much, Karen. And what comes to mind there is marketing. I think the recent developments in SABI that, Karen, you've pushed also that direction, these short clips of students with their projects and their focus areas and instruments, I think it's amazing. So for me, those kind of activities would raise really that attention. So I think that's something that is very, very attractive. And this was not just one student, and you've seen how already the response on LinkedIn, how many more viewers just in that 1 week. So I think, yeah, very important. And we haven't even used any of these platforms to raise these more serious issues. Thanks, Karen. Are there online any, I'm so cognizant of the time. I think the time is almost up for this session. For online, any thoughts to the main challenges in terms of what can be done more of? So we see visibility is important, working together is important, hence events like this, hence user groups like this, and strategic focus. And yes, Karen, fantastic.
I think, sorry, I see Adrian's also raised her hand. I'll try to be quick. When you were speaking about the funding systems and frankly, we're all competing with each other for the same equipment grants. I think it just takes the community deciding to not compete, but to apply in a coordinated manner and on a consortium basis to try and counter that. And I think, especially with something like SABI, I think there's a lot of opportunity for something like that. It won't address everyone's needs, but it might be a smarter way of getting equipment into the, if you step back from institution level and go regional level. And if there's a prioritization of different universities that is inconvenient to some of us, well, we can get over that and partner with the various institutions because they could probably do with that support as well.
That's a very good point. And it goes to that, the FCS model, that if we know the different environments, and if we preempt what could be that FCS bit where there is also, we take a bit, that sting out of that, and actually have a strategic equipment growth and expertise growth plan in doing so. It's a very good point. It would, of course, require that the unit, all the platform managers and so forth, that they are really on board with that. And yeah. But I could imagine if a society that is really like a community where it is really so beneficial, that trust would come through it. Yeah. Chris, yes?
So hello, Chris from Zeiss here. Yeah, a couple of quick observations and things that I've seen from the UK community growing. The first one was, as it grew, the most popular event of the year was all the facility managers get together once a year. Very light format, 2-day format, one night socializing. No microscopes are brought to it. So it's a kind of cheap thing, but it means everyone gets together and they do these kind of discussions face to face, also with some educational things, but it just helps build the community. The second quick thing from that, the RMS in the UK, who is, I guess, probably the closest thing to what you're doing with South Africa Bioimaging, began to set up a website which was listing all of the equipment that people are happy to share. So it's kind of like, look, these are the confocals we've got, but it was, what are the capabilities, laser lines, lenses, enough detail that you kind of know what it can do, and the contact person. And it was like, if you're on the list, you're prepared to share, but they built up this thing so they knew who was where. And then finally, that last point about kind of collaboration, where I used to have a territory in the north of the UK that was called the N8. So it was eight universities that were meant to cooperate rather than compete. And there's a bit of both, inevitably, but they did have this thing of they would write supporting letters and it'd be like, right, whose turn is it to get a bit of promotion? So they would all write a supporting letter saying, yeah, university number 7, their confocal's 10 years old. They really need a new one, don't they? And we would probably use it if it had something slightly different. So yeah, there's both natures to it, but you can get on a bit. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Chris. Very good. Adrienne, your hand is up.
Thanks very much. And I think this follows on from what Karen said and what Chris said. I think we maybe need to think about imaging as a sort of pipeline and a sort of continuum. So I think what we have at the moment, and forgive my ignorance, I could be wrong in this, but I think we have some institutions that are very well resourced and then institutions that have nothing. And so I guess one of the questions we could ask ourselves is if we really want to have true visibility and true impact, then how do we get even a grassroots instrument into every institution? Into, for imaging, how do we start at the bottom and get basic stuff into every institution so that people start using it, and then that leads to the higher end stuff? Because I think until you have a real, critical mass of people who are even aware of the equipment and what you can do, it's going to be very hard to reach the sort of level where we can really leverage it as a resource for the sort of country in terms of using imaging in your research. And so I think if the society could work towards really increasing access, really increasing the pipeline, really increasing the sort of grassroots use of it, then that will act as a catalyst for the higher end stuff, because then there will be a natural increase in people wanting to use the equipment, which can then lead to higher end stuff. So again, I say I may not be as aware of the national situation, but certainly I know in the Eastern Cape that there aren't access to as many facilities, and so people are just not even aware. And I think the awareness that you need is not just education about the fact that it's there, but being able to use it and being able to see the benefit, being able to see the increase in your impact of your outputs and that kind of stuff. So I think if the society and the high-end users can work really well to stimulate the grassroots, that will have a net positive benefit. And then just one last thing to say that I know, for example, like the biophysics community, they have an online webinar series. And I think that also creates a community that can then start talking to each other and being aware of what's going on. So that could be something that we could look to do if that's not already happening. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Adrienne. Fantastic. Really fantastic feedback. And I mean, we are aware that I think we have 35 or so institutions, higher education institutions. I think here on our SABI page, we have now 11. So there's so much work needed. Excellent. Thanks so much. We have to move on. So thank you, everyone, for the engagement, and we move on to the next topic.
Thank you very much, Ben.